Hi, my name is Jerry from Jerry PH Photography. Welcome to Pocket Wizards ControlTL, Mild to Wild. Hi, welcome to this little homemade educational video about the Pocket Wizard ControlTL units. I've called it Mild to Wild for the very simple reason that we're going to be doing little explanations and demonstrations about the capabilities of the ControlTL units, starting off with the most basic of functionalities. For everything from how to turn them on, how to plug in the batteries, all the way up to their more advanced features. There's obviously a few things I'm not going to be able to do because I simply don't own all the equipment that are compatible with the ControlTL units. However, within the limitations of everything that I own, I will try to give a gradual progression of the techniques and features that I use on a daily basis as a photographer. I'm also going to be doing things like mixing and matching, so every now and then I'll throw in concepts that might not include the ControlTL units. For example, compatibility with legacy versions of the Pocket Wizard units, or things like, for example, the Pocket Wizard Plus 2s. So let's get started. I hope we have some fun, and in the process we can make some pictures and maybe exchange some thoughts, methodologies, and maybe throw in a few concepts. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started right now with the basics. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the basics. Let's start off by identifying the units very quickly. Let's start off with the flex, which is the larger of the unit. If I take this in my hand and orient it in such a position that I can read the writing on it, I'll see that I'm looking at the Pocket Wizard Flex TT5. On the left side, I have a series of 3 switches. The top is the group selection switch, the middle is the off button, and on in terms of configuration 1 or configuration 2, C1, C2. Underneath that we have the test or learn button. Now this is a button and not a switch. If I then rotate it up a little bit, I'll see that we have 2 little sockets or input sockets. These are for connections that will allow us to either use a sync cord or to connect a cable that will allow us to remotely trigger a camera. Next to those we have that little LED light section, and if I turn it in such a manner that the writing is backwards to us, I now have the antenna facing towards me, so I can come up here and lift up the antenna. Once I lift up the antenna, I can see that there's a mini USB connector. This little connector here is used to connect our provided USB cable with and then connect it to our computer. From here we can then do things like firmware updates and configuration changes to the firmware. I'll close the antenna. I will then turn the unit over. So once it's turned over, I see that there is actually a hot shoe connector and a 1/4 screw hole socket that I use to connect or to hold the Pocket Wizard to my setup. I'll show you a little bit about that later. We're also presented with a location. If I turn it again to its side, I can then see the door that allows me to access the batteries. By sort of putting my thumb into the little socket and pulling down, it allows me to open up and access the door to the socket. The next one on the list is the Mini TT1. Its configuration is similar. Again, looking at it so that the writing on the top is oriented towards me, we see that I have not 3 switches but 2 switches. Since the Mini TT1 is a transmitter only, unlike the TT5, which is a transceiver, meaning it can send and receive, this one only has a off button with a C1 or C2 on button configuration, configuration 1, configuration 2. Underneath it we have a test/learn button. Next to that we have the LED lights. Now both of them have a hot shoe built in on the top, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into the section on commanders. If I take the Mini TT1 and rotate it upside down, I see that it also has a hot shoe connector, and I also see right here is with the compartment door for the battery. The Mini TT1 uses coin type batteries, whereas the Flex TT5 uses AA batteries. The opening for the USB cover is on the right side of the unit, and I can take my thumb and sort of open it up like this. And once I open that up, I can then see that I have the opening here for the USB cable, just like the one on the Flex TT5, and this one can also have firmware updates and configuration changes. Now, when I play with the battery of the Mini TT1, I have a tendency to want to wear latex gloves. Latex gloves are just a way of protecting the amount of current or life that's left in the battery of the unit. Now I can use either of those little latex finger covers. You can get those at the pharmacy, or I can use latex gloves, which I usually buy them by the packs of 10 or 20 or whatever, or 100, whatever. And I will then be able to touch the battery. I will try never to touch the battery by itself. The reason being is that by just having your finger touch the battery of itself, you typically lose approximately 50% of its life within the first second. So it's to your advantage, to your benefit, to not touch these batteries with your fingers. I am also a big believer in recyclable batteries, or rechargeable batteries, if you will. So I don't use prime batteries in my units. I try not to use prime batteries anywhere, but in the case of the Mini TT1, I especially am very, very happy that there's something called an LIR 2450 as opposed to the CR 2450 battery that is available from eBay in a rechargeable format. And again, I will recharge it. There is a positive, which is the top, and the negative, which is the bottom, and I always put it positive side up. I then install it and close the door. So from there it is properly sealed and protected, and once the door is closed, ready for use. In the case of the Flex, the kinds of batteries that I like to use in the Flex are any loop. And the reason I use these is because they have a reasonably good capacity. They're not as good as something like, for example, a PowerX. However, these don't lose their charge when they're not being used. So what I can do basically is I can charge these up, and I'm going to put them into my Flex TT1. The orientation is, again, with the lettering in a manner pointed towards me that I can read the letters on top. I'm going to put the positive side up on the furthest slot, and I will put the positive side down on the slot closer to me. I can then close the unit and it is ready for use. Although I never condone leaving batteries in your units for long periods of time, in the case of if you do put your any loops in here, they will not drain as quickly as lithium-ion batteries will. But in any case, I've even heard about and I've seen the results of even an any loop battery that leaks acid into somebody's camera. It will cause damage. The fumes from the acid will damage the circuitry, and then you can take this little unit and pretty much just throw it away. Because over time, you'll start getting random errors that will get worse and worse as the damage grows. So, as a general rule, I never leave batteries inside my units. when I'm storing them for anything over 2 or 3 days max. If you're going to store them for a week or more, take the batteries out and store them in a cool, dry location, preferably in a plastic case. That goes for the that goes for the Mini TT1 as well as for the Flex TT5. The third item that I have on my desk here is called the AC3 Zone Controller. This little marvel of engineering is the unit that's going to permit you to control up to 3 zones individually in terms of whether that zone is off, in manual control, or in TTL control. You'll also have the ability via rotating dials to go up and down a maximum of 6 stops, anywhere between full power to 1/64th. And I can control each one of my 3 groups individually because the design of this is built in such a way that you have 3 sliders that control whether the zone is off, in TTL mode or manual, and a rotator per each zone that gives you the ability to go plus or minus 6 stops. We'll take a look at the AC3 and the controllers section in a little bit more detail later on. Firmware updates are one of those things that you should be doing as a very first step as soon as you get your Pocket Wizards out of the box. Now, if you just plug them into your computer in of themselves, they're not going to be recognized because you're missing something here. You're going to be missing the Pocket Wizard configuration utility. You can download the latest version straight from pocketwizards.com/downloads. So take a look in that area and download the Pocket Wizard configuration utility, install it. As soon as you take the supplied USB cable and you plug it in, and you take the other end and you plug that in to your computer, when you start the Pocket Wizard configuration utility, it's going to be able to recognize your ControlTL units and you will be able to make a firmware update. Now, exactly how do you do a firmware update? Let's go through that procedure right now. Alright, we've gotten to the part where We have the batteries installed in our units. They've been taken out of the box. We have the firmware updates, and we're at the latest versions of firmware, and everything's ready to go, right? So, not quite. Because these are the most advanced triggers on the market, there's a couple of little concessions we have to make. And that is in terms of functionality. To get the best out of them, there's a series of rules that we have to follow, especially when we talk about turning them on and synchronizing them so that they're ready to be used for our session. Let's first talk about getting them put together in the right order. There is no particular order you need to install them. I just put them in any order. So as far as that goes, I can just slap the flash, lock it in on top of the flex. I'll take my transmitter, which can be a flex or a mini, and put it on there. Make sure that it's seated properly, that it's pushed all the way forward, and that it's locked down. So once it's locked down, it's ready for use. If it's not pushed in properly, your contacts will not be in the proper location, and you're going to have intermittent performance and bad performance. So make sure that it's there and it's locked down properly. If you're using an AC3, there's a little button here that when you press, raises and lowers the locking pin. Make sure that when you press this button, and then slide it forward all the way to the end. I've had people complain that their AC3 doesn't work properly. 9 times out of 10 it's because they didn't seat it properly. Again, make sure you press the button, slide it forward all the way, let go of the button, make sure it's locked in. Okay? That's the way to install it. Turn on order, which is the second last thing we need to look at before we start using our camera to start to take pictures, is the most important thing that you can do, because if you don't follow the proper turn on order, you will get inconsistent performance. The order is all your remote flashes, then all your remote flex units, then the on-camera transmitter, then the camera. Okay? Let me just take off my AC3 for a moment. Starting with the remote flashes, I turn on my flashes. I make sure that they are on in TTL mode. They cannot be in manual mode. They have to be in TTL mode. Talking about flashes, for maximum compatibility and to be able to access the entire feature set of the ControlTL units, they have to be one of a series of supported flashes. The list of supported flashes is available at the Pocket Wizard website. But as of this date, I believe that the currently supported flashes are the Nikon SB910, SB900, SB800, SB700, SB600, and the SB400. So, this is turned on. It is in TTL mode. The next thing that we do is we turn on the flex. When there is going to be a proper synchronization or communication between the flash and the flash will give off a little pop. I'm going to take the button now, the power button, and move it to the C1 position. I'll just place my hand here and show you that there's going to be a little flash. And there it is. This tells you that they're communicating. At this point, I take a look at the little flashing light on the back of the ControlTL unit, and if it's flashing green, my batteries are in good condition. If it's flashing yellow, the batteries are yellow. Change them out as soon as possible. If it's flashing red, change them out now. Now, the next step that we want to do is to orient the antenna of our flex units. I used to have them in a straight up position like that, and I never had any trouble with it in terms of distance or reliability. However, Pocket Wizard recommends that we do this, meaning orient them horizontally. And I believe that they would do that for the simple reason that they try to distance the antenna as far as possible from the body of the flash. And between this and this, I haven't seen any great differences, but from now on, I've always done this, and I've never had any problem with keeping my antenna horizontal. So my suggestion is, because Pocket Wizard asks us to do it this way, that you do it this way. So at this point, the flash is turned on. It's in TTL mode. It's communicating with the flex, which is turned on, and the batteries are in good condition. We're good to go here for the moment. We now move over to the camera. Starting from top to bottom, we turn on the transmitter on the camera. If my flexes are all set to C1, this gets set to C1. I turn that on. I note the condition of the batteries here. Again, if it's flashing green, they're good. Yellow, change them out as soon as you can. Red, do it now. The next thing is I can turn on the camera. The last thing that we need to do to make sure that everything is working is to do a synchronization shot. A synchronization shot is done by me placing my camera into manual mode. I then move my shutter speed into 1/125th of a second, all right? And it doesn't matter if it's in focus, it doesn't matter if you're pointing at your subject or whatever it is, just pop off a frame. Now we're ready to start shooting, at which point I can change my camera settings to whatever I like and start composing and start shooting. In the next section, here's where we are going to really be taking a look at the mild to wild sequence. We're going to be taking a look at using this setup in its most simple form, and that is just a single flash and a single camera and no controller. Let's take a look at that section now. Alright, here we are set up in the most basic of setups. Just like we were saying, we have the single flash, single flex, the on-camera mini, and the camera. Our scene is such: a nice red car for the subject on a nice shiny base, and the background is very dark. And this is a great test. I mean, I could take that off, we can use the white wall behind it, but it sort of kind of kills something that I want to talk about, and that's ITTL. TTL, all kinds of TTL, try to balance the entire scene so that it is always more or less 18% gray or middle gray. And what that does is it can often cause us to overexpose in situations that we don't want it to. And that's when we have to sort of cut things down a little bit. So, when does it try to do this? When there's a lot of darkness in a particular frame, it tries to light it to the point that it becomes lighter. And that's when we have to use the tools like the flash compensation to try to cut it down. But before we get there, let's start things with the turn on order that we talked about before. So here we have the remote flash. I'm going to turn this on. It's now set to TTL mode. I'm now going to turn on the remote flex. C1, and I'm going to wait for that little pop to let me know it's communicating. There it is. I now am going to go to the camera. At the camera, I'm going to turn on the mini, and then I'm going to turn on the camera. What's the next thing that we're supposed to be doing? The synchronization shot. So I'm going to come over here, set my camera into manual, put the shutter speed at 1/125th, and just pop off a frame. So at this point, I'm not expecting there to be any massively good exposure. It's just a synchronization. However, what I'm going to do at this point is put it into, let's say, aperture priority. Let's set my aperture to f4, focus, and take the shot. Just as I thought, the car is pretty hot. And what we can do is I can come over here and knock down the flash power by one stop using flash exposure compensation. So let's take it down by one stop. I'm going to refocus, take the shot, and look at it from here. Now this looks pretty good, but the background is all black. So what would happen if we added a second flash to the setup? What a coincidence, I just happen to have one right here. So, again, we're going to come over here. I'm going to turn on the remote flash. I'm going to turn this on, the flex, to the same configuration, C1, and wait for the pop. There it is. Now I can come over here and take a look at taking a shot. So I focus, shoot, and look at the picture. Wow, overall, it's just underexposed. Why is that? That's because when the background was black, that single flash was trying to light it to be a middle gray, and that just put out a lot more power. Now when I have the background lit up, it hits that middle gray faster, meaning the main flash is going to be lower. So what I need to do is go back to my flash compensation and remove that -1 and set that up to 0, 0. Focus. Take that shot. Let's take a look at that. That looks nice. And that's how a single zone setup works. Alright, so now we have an idea of what ITTL, single group ITTL that is, can do for us. And it gives us a lot of possibilities. However, we do know that there are some serious limitations. For example, when I had those 2 flashes there was no way that I could increase one of them without increasing both of them. There's no way for me to decrease one of them without decreasing them both. You have one single group, and that's what basically is a job of a commander. It's the ability to be able to control multiple groups. And that's something that we're going to be taking a look at in the next section. Well, that was a lot of material to cover at once. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. We're not finished though. There's a lot more to come as we move from mild to wild. In the next installment, we're going to be starting out with commanders on the ControlTL units. My name is Jerry from Jerry PH Photography. I'll see you in the next video.